TyTy Takeaways. We are coming to you from the luxurious couch, leather
or faux
couch.
leather.
Anyway, we're coming to you from the couch. So this is
It looks like leather, but
well,
is it faux leather?
well,
It's pseudo
I
leather.
don't know. It's kind of
It's nice.
Yeah, I got one time
I
it
like
reminds me
it.
of a story. One time
I like it.
at a church I pastored, I had this old Bible. I love Bibles. I got a lot of Bibles. And sometimes when I'm bored, I just scroll on my phone and look at Bibles. And I just wish I could smell them all. Oh, is that boring?
Sorry, I did this
kind of a
last
boring
time.
story,
No, at the
so-
last TyTy Takeaway, I
Yeah.
yawned the whole. I'm sorry.
So-
Excuse me.
So listen,
Excuse
we're
me.
coming to you
You
live.
can't help it when you yawn.
I know, that's exactly right. So here we are. We're here today live, and we're glad to be here, and we're excited to be here.
Yawning and all.
So what we got today? What's our announcements?
You were talking about you like to smell Bibles.
Oh,
What
yeah,
were
yeah.
you saying?
That story will be for another day. Let's do that another day.
Oh,
So what
I
we got?
hate when
What
you
we
do
got?
that. You
What-
have to finish the
No,
story.
just what we got first right now. What's our,
Talking about marriage, let's talk about pet peeves. Starting a story and not finishing it.
yeah,
Well, you like to smell Bibles.
that's
Can
right.
you smell? Or have you lost your smell?
Not during this time of year, for sure. This time of year is hard for me. My sinuses are all shot. It was like this last summer. My sinuses are bad. I guess that's where everything's blooming and growing. It's tough. But look, we got some announcements to make today. We're going to talk a little bit about yesterday, and we got several things to talk about.
So I have the announcements on my phone. So I've got tomorrow the Joy Fellowship. The seniors 55 and older are going to the Smoking Pig Barbecue. So meet at the church at 10:30. If you're not on the church quick cast text, then call the office and say, hey, I need you to add me to the church text message. It's something called quick cast, and that sometimes the church will send out a text message. If you are a lady or a youth girl, we want to get you added to the women's ministry page called Soul Sisters. So it's just a private page just for the ladies. And so just let us know if you want to be added or if you need to get the quick cast. So that is Tuesday. We have church Wednesday night at 6:30 for all ages, from nursery all the way to adults. The youth meet over here in the youth room in the multi-purpose building, and the adults meet in the sanctuary. I think it's 1st through 5th grade meet in the social hall over there, right out from the breezeway. And then the younger kids, like 5 years old, like from, I don't know, is it 3 to 5, I guess, they meet in the small children's church room behind the sanctuary. So, and then there's the nursery for babies. So,
That's
I mean,
right.
I would encourage you to come out. It's more casual on Wednesday night. So, if you have to come straight from work and your scrubs come on, it's very just casual, but it's still a good teaching message.
Did you mention to the parents that they serve pizza for the children so they don't have to worry about supper?
I didn't say that here. But yeah, they do feed the kids pizza, so that helps. That definitely helps. And then we have, I think that's all the announcements for this week, except next Monday, April 15th, the Soul Sisters, we're going to meet in the social hall, and we're going to be, if we can round up enough of these boxes, we're going to be making prayer boxes, decorating them. I'll be talking about prayer. You don't want to miss coming to that. We'll have chicken salad chick for supper. So bring a friend, and you can sign up. There's a paper sign-up sheet in the sanctuary, or you can just, comment or text me that you're coming, and we would love to have you.
Yeah,
So.
just to comment on that. If you really want to get connected, you're a lady and you want to get connected, you need to be part of the Soul Sisters, because they're reading the Bible together, right?
Yes, we just finished Judges and Ruth, and now we're in 1 Samuel. I think we're on the 100th day, either today or tomorrow? Oh, so tomorrow is our 100th day of reading God's Word together.
And the neat thing
Bible.
about that is, like, at the ladies, you can comment on the Bible reading with each other.
Yes.
And then, if you want to feel more connected, come to the monthly events, because that's when y'all, as the ladies, get together. Y'all talk, y'all fellowship, y'all share, y'all do a craft, you do Bible study, and then they also have the group that you told them to be part of. And in that group, can they communicate in that group? Like, can they?
Yeah, I just did a video Sunday. I said, hey, y'all can comment and post.
Yes.
You can post things. You can ask questions. You can do your own video in there. And so, yeah. Sunday I did a video in there telling them, yes, we want you to have the freedom to post and share and,
Yes. So, if you're coming, even if you're new, if they've been here 1 week, if you were here Sunday, like, you can be part of that group. There's no prerequisites, right? Except for you have to have a soul and you have to be a sister, right? And so you can be part of that, but I encourage you, church life, you get what you give. So if you are friendly, you're going to make a lot of friends. If you serve, then you're going to be blessed. If you try to get involved, people are going to get involved in your life, and you won't feel like you're just coming to a meeting on Sunday, but you actually can be part of a faith family, a community, and it's all ladies, so that's great. Now the men, we don't have a men's group, like.
You don't even have Facebook.
Yeah, so,
But there is a men's ministry.
There's a men's ministry called Band of Brothers, but there's no men's group on Facebook. But there's also, Archer's Hour, just some opportunities for you men to get involved.
One of them could start one, right?
That's right.
Yeah, Archer's Hour, that's which?
Fourth Sunday.
The fourth Sunday of the
month. Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, if you're a youth girl, you can come to our April 15th one. So just let us know, so we can kind of have enough chairs and things like that set out. But so Ephesians 5.
Yes.
You preached Sunday morning, which we met in the multi-purpose building.
The worship
Sunday.
center. I've been corrected on that.
I was trying not to call it a gym.
The worship center.
That's what it is. I was trying so hard not to call it the gym.
That's right.
So it's
the worship center. Yes.
Okay. Well, we met in the worship center Sunday morning.
Yes. My goodness, what a great.
It was a good thing we did, because we wouldn't have. I don't think we would have fit.
Would not have fit in the sanctuary.
And you preached on. Now tell me, why were you nervous about preaching about marriage? The first verse. Is that why?
Well, we live in a world where a lot of times the Bible doesn't seem to be palatable for our culture. So, there's a few hot topic buttons, that, when you preach on them, right away that it can be misconstrued. Like, there's some key words. I mentioned a few key trigger words for people. Family, marriage, husband, wife, parents. Those words are supposed to be beautiful, harmonious, God-honoring things, but because of selfishness and sin, it's been marred. So, even how we talk when you say the church is a family, well, if you have a bad family, you don't want to be part of a church family, right? Or if you've had, so as we got into the text, it wasn't so much that I was nervous. I think I was trying to allow my nervousness, so to speak, and humor to invite the people in, to bring them in to it instead of being on the outside listening. I wanted to draw them into my shoes, draw them into seeing it from how I was preaching it, so they would be on board instead of watching. So, I was nervous. I made the first verse in the chapter.
Mhm.
So you know, that was a bit.
Says what?
So
I got distracted because I was like, wait, where's the ring light at?
I was wondering what happened there. I was sharing it. I didn't know what happened. It's been a long day.
You know, I get distracted very easily. That's why it helps me to take notes. I was listening, but I also noticed, oh, the ring light's not right there. But yeah, I mean, I didn't know if you were going to keep talking. But he preached out of Ephesians 5. And it was on marriage, and it was on the husband's role and the wife's role. And you know, we wrote a marriage book, gosh, a long time ago. And in that marriage Bible study, it's kind of like a Bible study that we wrote. And I kept thinking about one thing we wrote about in there, like you take a Coke machine, you know, like a soda machine. What do you call it?
Coke machine, yeah.
In Kentucky we called it pop, but we live in Georgia now, so Coke. And you know, if that machine is out of order, you cannot get a Coke or a Sprite, or an orange Fanta. Like if you push the button, it won't come out. It just won't work. If it's out of order, it won't work. So marriage has a certain like order in order for it to flow. Have you ever heard people say, "Oh, I'm just in the flow. Everything's like clicking. It's just I'm in my flow." Like marriage is meant to just flow in this beautiful, graceful thing. But if we get out of our role, then it's more of a war and a fight and an argument, and you know, working against each other instead of working with each other. And our culture's really, you know how you were talking to me at home on the couch. We were talking about, I don't know, maybe this, and how you can swing so far to the other side that it's not a healthy balance. So, like when they were trying to get women the right to vote, I mean, that's good. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's awesome. Fight for the right for women to vote. But then it's like feminism has been taken to this other extreme where, you know, it's just been taken to the other extreme of women wanting to rule and control and conquer everything above men, and it is in the woman's nature to want to control, right? That's part of the sin fall, is that our husband would rule over us, so that we have this like nature in us that wants to control everything. And part of that, you have to use that to manage your home, to keep up with your kids and their schedule. But the husband is the leader of the home. And so, and you know, you were talking about it more as the Roman culture and how their culture was, it wasn't natural for the husbands to love their wives.
Correct.
Because now I think this passage in our culture, in the past 20 years, this passage can get a bad rap because people are like, oh, the husbands, all they have to do is love their wife? That's easy, but the wife has to submit. Like I've heard people say that, you know, that, but then you were saying, oh, the wife has the husband has the harder job. The wife might have an easier job. You know, people will kind of give their opinion on which role is easier.
Yeah, they're both no doubt challenging because, you know, it's, and, you know, and one thing is that I was trying to highlight was the culture. The culture helps us understand the context and the.
But we have to live it out in our culture.
That's exactly right.
You did explain it really well, but it does apply to the 2024 culture, and that's the hard part.
Yeah. Sometimes. Yeah.
Is because.
But you know, here's the argument. Here's the arguments I've heard. So you know, after church, people would talk to me. So I heard two. So I heard two kind of discussions. One said this. Well, when my husband's loving me, it's easy to follow and submit to him. And then I heard a husband say, well, when my wife's submitting to me and respecting me, it's easy to love her. And both are true. And I think that's the key, that marriage is not a contract. Marriage is not, well, when you love me, I'll submit to you. Or, when when you submit to me, I love you. It's, I'm gonna love you and serve you no matter what. And then from the wife's perspective, it's, hey, I'm gonna respect you and follow you no matter what. And so, I think it's both husband and wife doing what God called them to do in the covenant relationship. Now look, we're sinners. And I mean, we know that from experience that, it's easy to be selfish and self-governing and independent. Like, that's easy. But it doesn't cause things to be smooth and to flow. And I think it's a constant battle. I mean, do you think anybody ever gets to a place where it's automatic?
I don't know.
Maybe you can comment. Like, does it ever get to a place where it's just automatic to love and cherish and nourish, and then to serve, honor, follow, and respect?
Those of y'all that have been married for 50 years, y'all comment and or for
So, hey,
30
question.
years or
At 20
40
years.
years, like comment and let us know. Does
So
it
there's some-
become automatic to
Yeah, there's some people out there watching been married 5 years. So we've been married 20 years this year. So
September will be 20
it's not
years.
automatic for me. Has it become automatic for you?
I think the word I'm thinking of is intentional.
Absolutely.
Like we have to be intentional. Like
Yeah.
we even talked a month ago about having a word that we could work on to have a better marriage. And
Yeah.
like my 2 words, I think we picked 2 words.
Yeah.
And my 2 words was, okay, I want to work on goodwill and compassion. Having goodwill towards my husband and having compassion towards my husband. So, only in the recent years have I learned, that I'm not a very, learning just to, I'm not a very, like, naturally compassionate and empathetic person, sometimes for various reasons. So that's something I want to work on.
Yeah.
It being merciful and gentle and nurturing does not come like natural to me. So I wrote that word down, compassion. I want to show John compassion instead of being rigid, right? And
So
then
it doesn't
I want to show
ever
you
become-
goodwill. So that's very intentional. Now, when we were newlyweds, the whole like we were both. See, I think our marriage would have been different if we weren't both called to the ministry. I was so like willing to follow you to all these different states and all these different church plants and places and like youth camp. Y'all, there's been some times I bucked up and didn't want to go to youth camp because I was like, buy me a nice camper. I don't want to but there's been a few times when I was like, I don't know if I want to follow you everywhere. But in the beginning of our marriage, it came natural to follow you.
So I guess the comment is
I don't know.
Maybe it seems like to me the longer I live, the more I realize how weak I am and how insufficient I am in areas of my life.
I feel like the older I've gotten, the harder it's gotten.
Yeah, maybe y'all can identify with
to
that.
be a submissive wife.
So in other words, it doesn't become ever automatic. Every day it takes intention. And 2 words that I try to focus on this year is care and forgiveness. So I'm trying to work on those 2 words this year. And it seems like the longer we're married and the seasons we go through, as the children get older, as they go through their life experiences, it impacts our relationship. So I mean, I don't know.
Yes, having teenagers impacts your, styles of parenting, how you parent. That can really impact a marriage. I feel like if one spouse wants to parent one way and another spouse wants to parent a different way, how do you, come to that conclusion of how are we going to parent, right? There's a big movement on gentle parenting. Used to back in the day, it was everybody was spanking their children, and now there's this big gentle parenting movement, and I think you need a mixture of both, honestly.
And then there's in the culture, there's a non-parenting movement. like today you have parents that let the grandparents raise the children. Like there's no parent involvement because a lot of parents are so selfish that they're seeking a boyfriend or a girlfriend. So many children are left to be trained by
Yeah.
television and screens. So I mean, there are so
It's
many.
sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
And the devil is out to attack your marriage and to destroy it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when the devil sees that there's a Christian husband and a Christian wife trying to have a godly marriage, he's going to want to destroy that, because then he can just, really hurt your children if he destroys your marriage.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, like, divorce affects children.
Yeah.
It really, truly does. And so the devil wants to destroy our homes. He really does. So you talked about how the gospel impacts the family, how the gospel impacts marriage. That's the main thing. Like the Bible says, don't marry a non-Christian. So if you're single and you're watching this, the first step is do not marry a non-Christian.
Yeah.
That will set you up for a terrible marriage and a lot of arguments.
Yes.
You've got to be on the same page, and if you're not both Christians, you're not going to be on the same page.
Absolutely.
So the first step is marry a Christian. But guess what? If you're a strong Christian that is following hard after God, don't marry someone who doesn't even go to church or who's not faithful to church. If you're a person that goes to church every time the doors are open, then you better marry somebody who also goes to church every time the doors are open, so that you can be in it together and not be on two different
and also to add to
pages.
that, don't you think that like theology matters too in marriage? So like for example, if there's a wife and her doctrine is that you can lose your salvation, and you're a man that believes that salvation is eternal, to marry a woman or a woman to marry a man that believes different on salvation, that could be a major problem when it comes to raising children. So I would just encourage you if you are single to really hammer some of those things out.
Yes. Maria said parents need to be on the same page and back each other up. Yes. Thank you, Gloria and Miss Barbara, for watching. And Miss Sandy, yeah, that's true. And gosh, when you start having children, you've got to have a lot of intentional conversations with your spouse about how are we going to parent. Are we going to spank or not? When are we going to give them cell phones? What are we going to ground them for?
Yeah.
What are our rules? Are they going to help with chores? And that's another thing you need to think about is like you and your spouse were probably raised different.
Not probably.
And he may, you need to talk about these things, before you get married. Like who's going to manage the money, who's going to do the chores, are you both going to do the chores?
And it changes through seasons too, right? Some seasons are, and then health issues too, when health issues come in life, if a spouse gets sick, if a spouse, there's so many dynamics to it, and I think that's why the wedding vow says in sickness and in health, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer.
Because we go through seasons.
We go through seasons of life. Yeah.
We've been through seasons where I was so sick I could not go anywhere.
Yeah.
And John had to basically not work and take care of me when we had little babies.
And then there's been seasons where I've been so depressed or so just kind of disconnected emotionally because of ministry and work. There's and it comes and goes in seasons.
Yes.
And I think that's, I would say the number one thing, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I think the number one thing in marriage that makes marriage work. We heard a great marriage talk. I hope we can get them to come to our church.
I've already asked them, and they emailed me back. I need to open it.
Yeah.
I need to find that email.
But
we got on their waiting list.
Yeah, because I think the number one thing in relationship is security, right? That there's security in the relationship, and that's what a Christian marriage is. It's a covenant relationship. I mentioned that Sunday, it's not a contract, it's not, you do this, I'll do this, but it's a covenant relationship that allows us to weather the storms together, you know, through financial difficulty, through financial prosperity, through health, through poor health, all those things, we can weather those together. So,
Yep.
but I didn't really spend a whole lot of time really on the marriage part of it. I tried to just touch and go, you know.
There was something I was gonna say. I'm trying to jog my brain to get that thought back to what I was gonna say. But you know, ask your spouse like, hey, if we were to pick two words, like what we did. We were like, okay, what do I need to work on?
Mm-hmm.
Like you tell me, you know, because your spouse may think they're doing a great job, and you're going, man, they're really not showing me any emotional support. And they're not going to know that if you don't tell them that,
that's right.
right? So sit down with your spouse and say, hey, I feel like you might need to forgive me for something, or I feel like you're not there for me emotionally. Can you show me some compassion and some caring kindness instead of being so hard? So just, it's going to be different for each person, but come up with a word or two that you sit down and talk with your spouse about that you can work on, you know? And,
that's right.
And a wife is not going to follow her husband if she doesn't trust her husband. Like that you said, wives were called to trust and follow their husbands. And I think that if a wife knows that her husband loves her and has her best interests at heart, and that her husband is following God, she's gonna trust him and follow him anywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
And so if you're really submitting to God, not really your husband. Like that's what helps me in times where maybe I didn't want to submit to you. I'm like, you know, I'm submitting to God and the scriptures, and not just to like you as a man, but like it says submit to your husband as to the Lord.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to really put our trust in God.
Yeah.
Ultimately, especially if we disagree, right?
Yeah, and I think though, but here, you know, it calls husbands to love their wives, and it's, you know, I think it's loving my wife is loving God, you know. And, you know, I think Paul's really calling women, husbands and wives, out of duty, out of this duty of following and taking care of, more to the heart of it, to where it's a genuine love and a genuine following, where it's true within marriage. The gospel can do that. I think the gospel can do that.
A genuine respect, not just a disdainful duty,
that's
is what
right.
you had said.
Yeah, a disdainful duty.
Serve
that's right.
out of a genuine respect.
And then love out of true, genuine care and sacrifice for the wife, you know.
Because a wife can probably tell if the husband's like just bringing home money and just providing a house, but not giving her that emotional support. She can probably tell that.
Yeah.
And that's where that conversation needs to come into play, because the man could be thinking, well, I'm loving you, I'm giving you money and a house, you know, but it really depends on the person, you know what I'm saying?
And that's what, and that's kind of, and that's why the gospel impacts marriage, is to change it, is to make it better, you know, in that area. Because, you know, you think about it. If there was no emotions involved in men and women, if it was just duty, if it was just my lot in life is to serve and to follow and to take care of children, and my job is just to make money and pay bills, and that's easy. Like, I mean, but we're
like
humans.
Robots.
Yeah, but we're humans. We have like souls, and we have feelings, and we have desires and needs, and God puts us together in marriage for that. But I also think that ultimately, if I'm not completely satisfied with the Lord, it's hard to be satisfied with your wife or with you. Or if a wife is not satisfied in the Lord, the husband can't meet all of the wife's needs, just like the wife can't meet all the husband's needs. And so, I mean, it's just a continual work in progress, and I think it's, and you said this, when we believe, when, you know, and I'll come back to that, but sometimes we don't do this as much now, but when we were younger, and we may need to get back to this, maybe why it was so natural, but we would often remind each other. I remember sitting at the table many times and us saying, hey, we're not the enemy. Satan's the enemy. We haven't done that as much in years, but when we were newlyweds, we often said, hey, remember, your wife's not your enemy, your husband's not your enemy, but Satan is the enemy that turns husbands and wives against each other. The Holy Spirit never turns a wife against her husband, and the Holy Spirit will never turn a husband against his wife. Never. Any division is from Satan and sin, every time. And so the gospel, I believe the gospel has the power to impact marriage. That's what Paul, I think, is hammering at here.
And you said love doesn't force.
Oh, man.
You know.
Ooh. Because God doesn't force us to go to church. He doesn't force us to pray. He doesn't force us to have communion with Him. But He wants us to want Him. He wants us to choose Him.
And that's what I feel like. The Bible is saying, God is saying, wives, submit to your husband. It's not saying, husband, tell your wife, you better submit to me. Like, that's, when you said love doesn't force, I think some maybe evil, wicked, abusive men would tell their wife, you have to submit to me and you have to obey me. And that's just, God is telling the wife to do that. He's not saying, husband, you better tell your wife to submit.
And then He's not telling.
It's what the Lord does a work in the wife to make her want to follow her husband. And the Lord does a work in the husband to make him able to love his wife.
That's right.
And it's not like you tell your spouse, you have to love me and you have to submit to me. Like
that's a fight.
That's not gonna
that's gonna be a fight.
That's not gonna work. That's not. God has to tell us our roles in marriage, and then we truly submit to God
and really
God's role.
And really, and what Paul does is he uses the illustration of the gospel in marriage. Is the next point that I talked about. And what Paul does here is he says, husbands, remember, Jesus openly showed his love. And if your Savior openly showed his love for you, then you openly show your love for your wife. And then he says, wives, if the church is called to follow Jesus and be subject to Jesus, then you do that to your husband as you do that to me, because the wife is part of the church. As you follow me, follow your husband. And so, I think it's a beautiful thing when it's done humbly and done right.
So you talked about, are you all in with Jesus? That was a funny part of the sermon when you were like hiding behind the cross and you had one eye.
Yeah.
Like somebody needs to make a short video out of just that part of your message Sunday morning, talking about one eye. Do you have one eye in the world and one eye on God? Because it just doesn't work well if you're not all in.
That's right.
With Jesus, being all in.
That's right.
I mean, now, will Satan attack your family more if you're all in with Jesus? Yes.
Yes.
I feel like you do face more attacks when you're all in with Jesus, but it's still better than being half in the world and half trying to follow God.
Yeah.
But do you have anything else before we talk about Sunday night?
No, I don't think so.
So you're in a series on Sunday night, right?
Yes.
The series on the life of Joseph, and it was about being in the pit. We have there's different. There's another pastor who's done a series years ago, and I think written a book about Joseph. In the prison, the palace, the pit, talking about the life of Joseph and these different. And how we can apply it to our life, and so it was out of Genesis 37.
There's been a lot of preaching on life of Joseph. So much out there you can find.
It's such a good story.
Yeah, David Jeremiah has some. Jensen Franklin has some. I mean, there's so many good teaching and preaching about seasons and journeys and kind of how God shapes us and prepares us for the vision.
I don't know why I keep yawning. Maybe I'm comfortable on this couch. So just because we meet our date with death doesn't mean we ran our course for God. That's a hard, sad truth.
Yeah, that's right.
To come to.
That's right. I can't think of anything more sad than being successful in life as something that doesn't matter for eternity. That would be awful.
And that's why we've got to share the gospel, because some people live their whole life for this world and they don't know Jesus. They don't know that there's a whole eternity. So God reveals direction before he reveals how.
Yeah.
So we have to walk by faith, right? And we have to take a step and follow him, and then along the way he'll reveal the rest of the steps. I guarantee, Joseph probably didn't think when he was in the pit that he was going to get rescued, and then when he got sold and then got put in prison, I don't know. That he went through a lot.
Can you imagine? I just can't imagine.
He went through a lot. So God reveals, you said a God-sized dream has to include God or reveal God. I didn't know which word you said. I was trying to take notes kind of.
A God-sized dream. A God-given dream requires God to do it.
It requires God,
If I can do it without God, then it wasn't a God-given dream. It was just something that I wanted to do.
Yeah. And so you talk about how your life has seasons, and we see in Genesis how Joseph goes through all those.
And by the way, seasons, the best I've heard. Remember we're at the Pastor Wellness Conference? That was a great messages on seasons.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about Joseph's brothers and how you talked about there was a weakness, a wickedness, and a worldliness of his brothers. When they threw him in the pit, when they lied to their dad and told their dad he was dead when he really wasn't dead, and all the things that they did to him, it was so sad. He was sent, seen, and sold by his brothers, his own family. Talk about a trigger and family trauma. Like, he had family trauma right there, but he didn't let his family trauma stop him from moving forward with God and from going on to be used by God. He had an unexpected and hard season, but then God used him in a miraculous way. And then what did he do? He ended up forgiving his brothers and giving them food and giving them land and just helping them. He could have had them all killed. He could have kicked them out and not fed them. But he took them in and he forgave them. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, the only way, when you think about that, it seems so impossible to do, but I remember I was at In Touch Studios, and Charles Stanley was talking to us, and, he was talking about all the hard things he'd been through in life, and he said the only way he has made it through life without getting bitter at how people treat him was that God told Charles Stanley for the rest of his ministry that everything that happens to him is from God. And he said, one day in the business meeting when a deacon punched him in the face on the stage, that God said, that's for me. And he said, when you look back over your life, you'll see, because, I've been saved just going on 22 years. And for the first time last night during church, for the first time I can actually look back and say, all the hard things, all the fear, all the rejection, all the hurt has prepared me for this season of my life, and I can give thanks for what God used those things. Now, they weren't fun. I do not want to go through those things again. And I will still go through things. But now I know why older men looked at me at 5 years old in the faith and said, God's using this for your good. And I was so mad. What do you mean God's using this? They're mistreating me. They're not doing right. They're stopping the work of God. Why? And they kept saying, and they were so much further down the road. So Joseph, if he could come sit here today, he would say this: don't curse God when you go through hard things. Just like Job. Don't blame God. Don't fight people. Your battle's not with flesh and blood. But God is using what Satan and Satan's servants mean for evil. God's using it for good. So Joseph would say, don't get bitter. Don't let your heart get hard. Forgive. Keep trusting God. Because remember, one day, your family, your boss, your neighbors, no matter what they do to you here, when you stand before Jesus and you're crowned and you're clothed and you're at the marriage supper of the Lamb, it's going to be worth it all. It's going to be worth it all. And, it's not easy in this life, though. It's not easy in this life.
Well, the last thing I had written down was you said those that suffer the most, God can trust the most.
My goodness, isn't that the truth? Nobody, we don't want it that way. I wish that God could use like silk to shape me and to lead me, but he has to use like sandpaper. Not sandpaper. He has to use like a sandblaster. You know what I'm saying? For me. So, yeah.
The sweetest people I know and the strongest Christians are people who have been through extreme suffering in their lives. You know, extreme, like horrible things. But yet they are serving God.
Yeah.
They love God. They love people. They haven't let it take away their life. You know.
And I remember people saying suffering and trials will make you bitter or they'll make you better.
Right.
And
it's easy to fall into that root of bitterness.
It is. That's a good.
And you've got to pull that root of bitterness out of your heart.
Because it will just spring up and defile many, the Bible says.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes other people can tell you're bitter and you can't even tell you're bitter.
Yeah. That's right.
But and how you overcome bitterness, I think, is through forgiving the people that hurt you.
Yeah. And it's seeing, I guess we have to see past them and what they're doing. Because, the truth of the matter is some people they go through some horrendous things. And I made this comment, and I made it very intentional, that what happened to Joseph was not right. It wasn't fair, and he didn't deserve it. And that, I think that's what we have to be sure to realize is, when we go through hard things, Joseph had the best character. He was faithful. God gave him the vision. So it's a battle.
Does it even say that he sinned?
No.
I don't think it ever.
No.
It always points out
that God was with him.
The good things that he did.
He did.
He ran away from temptation.
Yes.
And
that's right.
He kept a good testimony.
He did. Oh, that's good.
Throughout his trials, you know.
You remember, so Satan's accusation against Job was he only talks good about you because you bless him. Mm-hmm. But if you remove the hedge, he'll curse you. Mm-hmm. And many Christians have cursed God in their storm.
Yep.
Many Christians have cursed God in their storm.
Yep.
And when the storm passes, they regret it. Because they realize, wow, I came through it. Wow, God is still with me. But listen, that's why, I heard a pastor say one time, when you're in a storm, you just need to be silent. Let it pass. Because, sometimes we curse God. And I don't mean like we use his name as a cuss word, but we talk bad about God. Why didn't God answer this? Why didn't God do this? you know, and we just give a bad report about God. Now, there's a difference. We've talked about this. It's okay to ask God why. Now, there's nothing wrong with asking God why, but when we go around here going, you know, I'm so mad at God, and we're drinking and living wicked and blaming God and cursing God because of something in our life, we failed the test. We failed the test.
Yep.
And so it's a battle. I mean, it's not easy. Suffering isn't easy, and marriage isn't easy. You know, these things aren't easy. But with the gospel, we have courage, hope, strength. We have a friend in Jesus. So.
And comment your takeaways. Like, what did you take away from the sermon Sunday morning or Sunday night? What was your takeaway?
And hey, how about this? Look, let's throw this out there. I hadn't talked to you about this, but she'd have to do it because I'd forget. But if you have a takeaway from the sermons on Sunday, if you'll send them to Brandy, on Monday we may can address some of those on the TyTy takeaways. You know, if you have a question about the sermon or something that you'd like to hear more about, you know, maybe if you could send those in, we could try to maybe answer some of those on here.
Or even comment in the video,
Yeah.
and we could
That's
talk
right.
about it live.
We're already going way too long on these, aren't we? They're getting longer and longer.
Or the next week.
Yeah. So, you got anything
Yep.
else?
That is all.
All right. Well, look, thank y'all for tuning in. God bless you. And don't forget, we got service Wednesday night, 6:30. We have classes for all ages. Wednesday night Bible study. Look forward to seeing y'all Wednesday.